how to bring a never been done before product to market and get customers for it. In this episode of Humans of Growth, we talk about the messy, unsexy, behind the scenes of turning an idea into a product that nobody has ever seen before, where you are now the first in your category. From market research and prototyping to dealing with investors and banking regulations to guerrilla marketing, we cover the gamut of topics in this episode. Now let's jump in.
And today's guest is Sam Miller. Sam is the CEO of Kasheesh. Kasheesh is a fintech app that allows you to split any purchase among multiple different credit cards, debit cards, gift cards, everything in between that you already have. Sam, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So, Sam, take me back to, I think, maybe 5-ish years ago. What made you decide to start Kasheesh?
Yeah, so just over 4.5 years ago, I was sitting at a friend's apartment, and this was, I would say, the height of when BNPL started to take off. COVID was still running rampant. Consumer spending wasn't really going anywhere. A lot of stimulus checks were being sent out. And my friend's fiance was trying to buy something online, didn't want to use buy now, pay later for what are the obvious reasons now of overstacking loans, predatory lending, hidden interest rates. And she ended up calling the retailer and asking the retailer if she could split the payment across debit and credit cards. And they said that they had no technical solution for that online, but you could do that in store. And so I kind of sat there and had a little bit of an aha moment where I've remembered doing that in person multiple times, whether that's at a restaurant or at a big box store or grocery store, wherever it may be. I never really thought why that didn't exist online. I mean, if you think about what technical innovation is, it's taking brick and mortar essentials and converting it to a digital innovation that allows for, simultaneous and seamless use of what you're already doing on your day-to-day life. And I ended up on my walk home calling my co-founder, Kevin, and oddly enough, 2 days prior to that, his brother-in-law called him to borrow his credit card for the exact same issue. And so we viewed that as a kismet moment where people within our own network were addressing a problem that they were having and that they'd love a solution for, and use that as the startups universe way of showing us that we should probably solve this problem.
Great. I love it. So what did it take to get Kasheesh up off the ground?
A lot. There's a lot of components that go into building a business like Kasheesh. What you would originally think is just a technical innovation of writing lines of code, you end up looking at the fact that you're in banking. And so there was the element of building out a system that could actually technically split a payment across multiple cards simultaneously. But then we also had to work in regulatory and compliance elements like being SOC 2 Type 2 compliant, finding a bank sponsor that's FDIC insured, learning how to do payment remissions as well as returns and refunds, understanding when banks are paying out on the transactions themselves, integrations with payment processors. A lot of elements went into it outside of just the technical moat, I would say. But we had to really look at the industry and figure out how we fit. There was no policy that had to do with our specific use case when we were dealing with Visa, Amex, MasterCard, and the like. And so we actually had to have conversations with financial institutions about what our business model is and get them to buy in so that way the underlying cards don't get rejected for transactions as well. So there was a lot of research and development and a lot of conversations and a lot of things that were outside of just the technology itself. And then you have to layer in the fact that there is a technology at the end of the tunnel with this that has to be seamless and has to be user-friendly and has to work and be reliable for those consumers. So a lot went into it. And there was also the element of fundraising and all of that stuff that I'm sure we'll get into later. But it was, I would say, one of those businesses where you end up realizing that technology, even though it's a tech company, ends up being I would say 30 or 40% of the business itself, that there's a lot more that goes on behind the curtain.
Okay, I love it. So you had mentioned a little bit of skepticism from other people. Tell me about the skepticism you faced from, I'm assuming, investors, peers, probably the banks and the institutions as well.
Yeah, I mean, from the investor side, the skepticism was always around, are people going to use something like this? Unfortunately, the way that the VC landscape is these days is it's not people who are struggling financially. So to get them to understand that people out there are struggling, that are outside of that top 10% of earners, is something that even Airbnb faced early in the days, where you see their stories of when they were literally just an air mattress in someone's apartment. And you had a lot of investors turning them down because they would just stay in a hotel. They didn't understand or comprehend the fact that there are people out there that live differently than they live and have different means than they have. And now you look at Airbnb, and those investors that originally turned them down are the investors that are actually the ones using them to now rent full houses for vacations. And so, we've kind of had that full circle moment ourselves, but earlier on, the adaptation from investors of understanding that people were struggling to make ends meet, and they were living between the 1st and the 15th, between each paycheck, and the fact that most Americans, I think the number is now almost 90% of Americans don't have $1,000 in their savings account. They didn't understand that that was the majority of our country. And so we faced an uphill battle with that. And when we were able to get rid of that battle, we faced a battle with the financial institutions and the banks and regulation, and making sure that we were KYC compliant, OFAC compliant, SOC 2 Type 2 compliant. We were handling PCI properly, all of the industry agnostic elements that, again, would fly over the majority of investors' heads. We had to then hunker down and really figure that out ourselves and have conversations with financial institutions, issuers, processors, and acquirers to get them to buy into the business model, because traditionally, if we'll use Amex as an example, Amex wants the full transaction. And so if you're now telling American Express that they're going to get half of the transaction and that Chase is going to get the other half, there's a little bit of friction there because they want the full transaction. And we had to really have them look at our data and understand that if they don't allow for someone else to have a piece of the same pie, that they both miss the entire pie entirely. So would you rather have 100% of nothing or 50% of something real?
I love it. How long did it take for you to get investors and the institutions on board?
So my background comes from venture capital. I worked at Dream Ventures back in 2015. So fortunately for us, we've had experience in this. I've had 3 prior exits as a founder. Kevin, my co-founder, worked in investment banking and as a quant, and then later on worked at Apple in 1999 during Steve's reemergence as CEO. So our pedigree helped us quite a bit when it came to fundraising. But the market is always tough regardless. I mean, even though we're multi-time founders with a lot of success under our belts, we still faced adversity when it came to fundraising. Just because you may have been able to prove something before, but that's not the business they're investing in. They're investing in the one that you're working on now. And so we had to work pretty hard to get that financing. And it took us, our first year was really proving out the MVP of the technology and fundraising. And then from there, it got a little bit easier. But again, with the KPIs attached to the business, you have to keep going up and to the right. So it's never really something where you're just done with it until much later on in the stages of a business. But we did face quite a bit of struggles earlier on.
Okay, I love it. So from 0 to first year, it was mostly building out the MVP from what it sounds like.
Yep, so that was back in the family and friends stage of financing and just proving out whether or not the technology can work. And that was what we spent, I would say, the first, almost 16 months of the business really building that out.
Okay, what happened after that? What did it look like to go get your first couple of customers?
We're very fortunate that we were a first mover in the space, and we built a technology out that's never existed before. And when you look at the fact that people were looking for a technology like Kasheesh to exist, dating all the way back to 2016. So one of the things that we did when we were building out Kasheesh was, what pain point are we addressing outside of the split payment itself? And we ended up finding through a lot of research that people were doing something very similar, but it was just extremely bandwidth restricted. And it was taking them a lot of time. So what they would do is they would go to Best Buy's website, they would buy a gift card for Best Buy, they would fund that gift card with multiple different funding sources, credit cards, debit cards, etc., and then they would use the gift card for the transaction. And so that was taking them 20 to 30 minutes to do that. And if we could create a process of that that's far more seamless and takes a fraction of the time, we'll be able to get all of the adoption from those consumers that are already using that type of method and approach today. And so we took off pretty quickly, organically, once we were able to actually prove that the tech was feasible. And then that marketing just kind of led onto itself. So the users did the marketing for us at that point.
What did the initial marketing look like?
We were just going in Quora threads and Reddit threads and just commenting that we had built a technology that solves the pain point that they were facing. And they just started to use it and adopt it and send it out to others, and family and friends were sending it to each other. So that was where we just went straight to the source. People that were telling us that they were struggling with this issue and that they were using a very labor-intensive version of what we were creating. And we said, hey, you're going to be able to do exactly what you want to do, but you're not going to have to go through such a crazy process to do it anymore.
Hey guys, real quick, this episode is sponsored by Parison Network. Parison Network is a matchmaking service that connects businesses to marketing agencies that will actually get you results. There's over 50,000 agencies in the United States alone, and picking the right one can feel, well, pretty impossible. Parison Network simplifies the entire process by doing all of the vetting for you. From the initial agency search to interviewing and vetting the top marketing agencies to getting proposals and helping you with the discovery call, Parison Network does it all. This way, you end up partnering with a marketing agency that actually delivers outcomes, not empty promises. If you're ready to stop wasting money on marketing that just doesn't work, visit ParisonNetwork.com and get your free agency search started today. That's ParisonNetwork.com, PERISSON network.com.
Okay, wow. So I haven't heard a lot of founders who say that they got their first couple customers through Reddit or Quora. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, so those were the threads that we were originally reading about customer pain points to see how we had to build. So we went very customer centric when it came to building out our tech stack. We wanted to make sure that we were building something that allowed for consumers to split payments, but we didn't want it to be something where every time they had to go into the system, they had to update the cards and re-add information and constantly change things to make those transactions. And so we really built the first iteration of Kasheesh out specifically for those consumers. So that way when we did let them know that we had something that was going to solve the problem that they were facing, it was exactly what they wanted to have built for them. And so when we came back, almost a year later and said, hey, we're looking for beta testers to go in, and we're going to be in stealth while we figure out, some of the A/B testing that we're doing with you, but we would love your input as we build out the next iteration of Kasheesh. They were very keen on it because we were solving the problem that they were facing in real time. It was something that they were asking for, they were looking for it. And when we went to them and said, we built something out that alleviates you of that frustration, they were pretty excited to be a part of that beta group.
Great, I love it. So that was the beginning of year one, Quora, Reddit. How fast did y'all acquire new customers?
Pretty fast thereafter. From there, we went with a very product-led approach. Again, talking to our consumers, understanding their pain points, understanding how we could do it. So the first iteration of Kasheesh was just a single-use card. It was a digital card that used one time for that one transaction, and it was funded by your underlying cards. Eventually, we started having consumers saying, it would be great if I had the same card that I can just use over and over again, and the financing instruments of that one card were the underlying cards that I've linked with my account. And so from there, we built out our multi-use card. After we launched our multi-use card, they said, I would love to use this everywhere outside of just the online world. So at that time, you could only use Kasheesh online. We didn't have the ability for you to use it in person. And so we ended up launching a digital card that can be added for your wallet for Apple Pay and Google Pay. And that led from consumers being able to split transactions seamlessly online to then being able to do it with brick and mortar locations. And so we've just been really in tune with what our consumers' demand is and how we can make it a more seamless and efficient process for them by using Kasheesh.
Awesome. So when it comes to customer pain points, the obvious one is one of my credit cards is almost maxed out, or I have 3 almost maxed out cards and I need to split a payment. What have you seen in terms of pain points besides that, especially now that you've moved to like multi-use cards?
Yeah, so the pain points come a lot around literacy and understanding when it comes to finances. So you may have a consumer that is, almost maxing out a card, and that's a pain point for them. What they don't understand at the time is by almost maxing out a card, having a very high credit utilization rate, they're actually decreasing their credit score over time. And so if they don't pay the balance in full, what ends up happening is when that credit balance gets reported to the bureaus, their credit score decreases. And what that does is it limits you from going out and getting another credit card. It prohibits you from renting a new apartment or getting a mortgage, auto loans, whatever it may be, because all financial institutions base their decisions on your credit score. And so what we were able to do then was to educate the consumers by launching something called SmartSplit. That's our AI technology where we will actually allocate your underlying cards based on billing, balance, rewards, but primarily utilization rate. So that way your utilization rate stays below 30%. If your utilization rate goes above 60%, your credit score decreases. If it stays below 30%, your credit score increases. So we were able to keep our Kasheesh customers below 30%. We're averaging right now 29.6 across the board, where they're actually able to use Kasheesh between the 1st to 15th every day of the month, where they're not harming their credit score, and we're showing them that they have liquidity elsewhere that allows for them to keep that utilization rate below 30%.
Cool, I love it. So sounds like a lot of products like growth, word of mouth. Have y'all used anything else besides that? Have y'all been strongly leveraging anything with ads, Facebook, Instagram?
No, I'm a firm believer, and this may be old school of me, but if you have to build a product for consumers that you have to advertise to them, then you are not a tech startup. You're an advertising agency with a tech product. And so I, especially in the early days, I think that changes as you are focusing more on awareness and retention later down. But when it comes to the early adopters, if you haven't built something that is incredibly impactful, then you might be in the wrong space, or you might just be building something that's extremely niche and has to do a lot of marketing to bleed out into other sectors. But we wanted to make sure something that we built was applicable by just it existing, and that we didn't have to do the advertising, that the product did the advertising itself.
Okay, cool. What have y'all done in terms, you mentioned a little bit in terms of like credit education and teaching people like here's how to actually use your credit cards well.
Yeah, so aside from social media, email marketing, we ended up launching a finance academy directly on our site. So you can actually go on and read about not only how you can use Kasheesh for different things, but just like best practices when it comes to consumer education about financial literacy. And one of the reasons that we put a huge emphasis on that was if you look at how consumers are educated about their financial well-being, it usually happens either pre-transaction or post-transaction. Pre-transaction is I'm going on Credit Karma and NerdWallet and I'm Googling and I'm doing a lot of research before I make a purchase. If you think about that single mother of four in Wyoming that doesn't really have that much time or accessibility to go and do 5 hours of research to understand if she can make one transaction, what typically happens is then the post-transaction literacy and education. And that's when it's really bad. I've gone out and I've maxed out that credit card. I'm not getting paid for another 2 weeks. I can't pay this down before it gets reported to the bureaus. And now I have a maxed out credit card and my credit score just took a 60, 80 point, 100 point hit. And I'm now trying to climb back out of that downfall of my credit score. And so we ended up realizing that we could educate consumers through the process of transactions where they can make transactions that aren't harmful to their financial well-being, but then also educating them in an organic way. So if you look at Credit Karma and NerdWallet, for instance, what you typically have there is at the bottom of every article, there's a sponsor. And it's typically a credit card company that's using it for lead generation and customer acquisition. How unbiased can that article truly be if at the end of the day, they're getting paid by those financial institutions to write that article? And so the offering that those consumers are getting and the information that they're reading within that article might not necessarily be the best for them in that moment. And so we wanted to make sure that there was a content hub for our consumers that they could actually go out and read completely unbiased information because we don't have to worry about being sponsored by financial institutions to produce that content.
Yeah, I love it. It's interesting, as I've talked to a lot of people in the finance space, everything's biased based upon who has the most money to spend on ads.
Yep.
So tell me, like, when you look back over the past 4 years at Kasheesh, what's the biggest mistake you think you've made?
It's tough to say. I think a lot of mistakes in the startup ecosystem are learning experiences. I think that for us, as we started to grow, understanding that as the shift of a business occurs, that you have to change with it, not just from a technology perspective and not just from a brand perspective, but internally. You have to look at how you're hiring and how that changes over time. I can be transparent. In our earliest days, I mean, hiring for us was about just bandwidth and capability. If you could do the job that we needed to have done, we just wanted you here because we needed increased bandwidth. We needed people to come in and build because we had to build. I think you hit a certain inflection point where you start to realize that it's about the personalities at the entity. It's about the level of attention to detail that they're providing. It's not just about the skills that they encompass. It's about what else they bring to the table. So I always look at it where 100% of your job isn't defined by your to-do list, is what I like to say. So roughly 80% of your job is measurable. It's your KPIs. What are you building? What launch? Do you hit deadlines? X, Y, and Z. There's about 20% of your job that is not measurable in any capacity, and that's how you're there for your colleagues. That's what you bring to the culture, your work ethic, your personality type, your positivity, all of those outliers that actually matter far more in a business. And I think that Kevin and I could have done a much better job at addressing that earlier on in the early days of the business as leadership, because that breeds from the top down, not from the bottom up. And we should have been more in tune with it at times, of making sure that we were looking at things outside of just, the task capabilities of the staff that we've had.
Yeah, when it comes to hiring, 80% KPIs, 20% culture, what have you seen change as AI has started to replace jobs?
People are afraid, and that's something that we understand. AI has grown more in the last 3 months than it has in the last 3 years, and it's going to grow more in the next 3 months than it has in the past 3 months. And so it is something that when you're dealing with, software engineers or product designers or even marketing and social media management, that people are fearful of, what it's going to do for their livelihood. And so when it comes to leadership, you have to make sure that you're heading in the right direction where the employees that you have aren't afraid, because how can anyone give 110% to anything when there's that level of fear in the back of their head? And so what I think you have to do is get to a place where you're not reliant on AI, but you're adopting it to make your business more efficient, so that way those employees understand that they're part of the vision moving forward, but there's elements to their job that they can do a lot easier. So when you look at that 80%, that to-do list, that task-oriented job, you can actually put more on their plates if they're more efficient by utilizing and leveraging AI, which only makes them more instrumental in the business's growth and future. So you're taking a fear and turning it into an opportunity where you might be afraid that it's going to take your job. However, if you use it the right way, it's going to make your job easier. It's going to make it more efficient. We're going to get a lot more done in a quicker amount of time. It's not something to fear, it's something to embrace. And if you embrace it, your job is going to be completely fine, because again, AI is not going anywhere, but AI is not at the point where it can run without human beings at this point.
Yep.
So you still need human beings behind it to capitalize on AI's benefits. And if you can get them to embrace the fact that there has to be a human being behind it and orchestrating it, then their job is actually safer than it's ever going to be, because as AI advances and their understanding of AI advances, when you have people that are buying in a year from now, you're going to be miles and light years ahead of them, because you're now going to be the subject matter expert.
Yep. Where are you guys implementing AI in your business right now?
Everywhere. I don't think there is an area of the business that we aren't implementing it, unless it's on the banking relationship side. So, I mean, when you're talking about having a bank that is your sponsor bank with FDIC, you can't do that through AI. You have to deal with personal relationships on that side. I don't think that's something we would, frankly, ever risk ruining a relationship with a bank for. But everything from design to engineering to customer support, we're looking at ways to make sure that AI is involved. And even to our technology that we're innovating. I mean, I alluded to it earlier with SmartSplit, but that's our internal AI system that's making it easier for the consumer to understand how to split a transaction. So it's been a part of our DNA pretty early on, and we're using it pretty much across the board.
How are you creating time for employees and team members to learn and figure out and do R&D with AI?
That's just a part of their job. I mean, if you think about if it was going to take 10 hours to design something and now it only takes 5 because of AI, I now have 5 extra hours where I can tinker around, do A/B testing, do some R&D, where the same 10 hours is used, but I was more efficient with the first 5 hours, which now frees up 5 hours for me to be a little bit more innovative, push the needle, be a little bit more aggressive, and learn those lessons. And so, again, back to the point of AI is helpful for our employees and helpful for industries and helpful for different sectors. That's a way where you can actually sharpen your sword and become a more empowered employee, because you now get time back. I mean, time is one of the things that money can't buy more of. So if you can free up some time to be a little bit more innovative and to do some more R&D, that's actually how you become, the next level version of that employee.
I love it. So we're talking about looking back, looking forward, what is your hopes, dreams, goals for Kasheesh?
The goal's always been one thing. It's to be the all-encompassing financial wellness app that helps everyone, not just with split payments, but to understand finances, to save better, to spend better, to leverage liquidity in ways that you might not have thought about leveraging it before. And so we're using split payment as the customer acquisition wedge to have our consumers start to utilize our platform and trust our platform and get the brand out there. But what we would like to become is the one-stop shop for financial wellness, whether that's, hey, I'm making a transaction that's $112. Do I round up to $115 and put that $3 into an ETF? Do I put that $3 into a CD ladder or to a savings account? Or do I start looking at my annuity payments differently? We're about to launch some partnerships with reporting ecosystems where we have a lot of consumers that are using Kasheesh to pay for rent. And that is something that we're now working with the company on, reporting those transactions to the credit bureaus, where on average they're getting a 40 to 60 boost in their credit score just by reporting the transactions they're doing with Kasheesh. So we're looking at ways to take a necessity of I need to make a transaction in a more flexible way right now and turn that into an opportunity of how you're advancing your financial well-being.
So it sounds like you have a lot on your product roadmap.
You could say that.
How are you choosing what to focus on?
I think that's also a great benefit of AI. It used to be that you had to focus on very singular things just because it took a long time to build them out. Now with AI, we have shifted to 2-week sprints, where within 2 weeks we know whether or not something is worth pursuing live in the market, which allows for us to do a lot of internal R&D on our own of, hey, we've got 5 ideas. We want to see 2 of them in the market within the next 3 months, but we don't know which 2 ideas are the ones to launch in that market within the next couple months. We're now allowed to look at all 5 at the same time, test them out in different ways, and then we actually know, backed by data, of which 2 to launch in the quickest fashion possible. And so I think that's one of the biggest benefits of AI is it's decreasing the overall cost of R&D, but providing you enough data on the back end to know that you're making educated decisions and that you're not just making, hasty assumptions.
Do you have a specific LLM that you like?
Regarding?
Or just is there a specific AI model that you prefer, one over the other?
I think it's a little bit different for each sector and department internally. Like, I know for a fact that we love Figma's AI when it comes to design. And there's a few out there that our engineering teams like. I mean, everyone kind of has their own AI system that they prefer, just because as more you feed it more data, it feeds you back better results. So there's no real preference for us. It's more about just what do you have as the one that you like the most and find the most reliable.
Cool, love it. So 30 years from now, eventually maybe you retire. What is the one story that you will tell from your time at Kasheesh?
Oh boy. There's a lot. I mean, all the way from the inception of Kasheesh to the bad moments of, we at one point we were working with Stripe on our digital card issuance. And we were in something called a commercial bin, which is businesses to businesses for digital card issuance. And then they ended up realizing that we were a consumer bin, and Stripe didn't have a consumer bin at the time. And so they gave us 90 days to relaunch our digital cards with a new partner, and we had to hunker down as a team and find a new digital card provider in the market and rebuild our system from scratch to work with that new digital card provider and issuer. And even though it was one of like the worst moments in the business, from just like a holy crap, I can't believe we have to go out and do this. This is a nightmare of a situation, like as much of a tornado and a fire as you can ever anticipate. When you look back on those moments where the team really unites and you fight for the same battle together, I don't think that there's a price tag that you could put on that. Even retirement in 30 years, that's just one of those moments where you're showing up for each other and showing up as a team, where it's like, I can't believe we did that together. There was a mentor I had with my last startup, and about a year before we were acquired, he sat me down and said, Sam, are you soaking this in? And I was confused. I was like, what do you mean soaking this in? We're dealing with a million fires right now. I don't have time to soak this in. And he goes, in a year from now, these are the moments you're going to miss. When things become more corporate and they become more structured and you're not as lean and scrappy, that's when you're going to miss these moments, those conversations where you're doing 18-hour days and working weekends, and you're so bonded together as a team because you're fighting for this common goal as a unit. That's what you're going to miss. And a year later, I remember having a conversation with him and being like, you couldn't have been more right. I miss those moments more than anything. And even though the business was doing better then than it was doing a year prior, together, I think that level of camaraderie as a business is something that's really hard to replace.
Cool. I love it.
Hey y'all, so a little bit of an awkward situation. We ran into some tech glitches at the end of our interview with Sam. You can check the show notes to find all of Sam's information so you can go connect with him after this. Thank you so much for joining. We hope you got a ton of value from listening to this interview, and we will see you on the next episode of Humans of Growth.